The San Francisco 49ers trying to rebound in week 3. They're on the road at the Los Angeles Rams. It's time for a 49ers-Rams crossover episode. The biggest stories, key matchups, and maybe even some predictions for 49ers-Rams in week 3 coming at you right now.
You are Locked On 49ers, your daily San Francisco 49ers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
What is up, Ramley, and welcome to a crossover episode, Rams 49ers. Got my man, Mr. Brian Peacock. You can follow him at BD Peacock. You know him, you love him. He's the host of the Locked On 49ers podcast. By the way, Brian, a lot of our Rams fans say they listen to you guys' podcast. They like to see how the enemy's doing, so they're in tune with you guys as well. So I want to let you know about that, but let me know down below, too, guys. We want those score predictions. Also, if you haven't yet, join the party over on YouTube. Just past 14,000 subscribers. Hit the subscribe button. Hit the notification bell. Hit that like button. My name is Doug McCain. You can follow me on X and Instagram at DMAC_LA. I've been covering LA sports for over a decade. BR, SI, 24/7 Sports, Dodgers Nation, of course, the Rams 4 Locked On. And, of course, Mr. Brian Peacock joining us today. And before we get into it, today's episode of Locked On Rams is presented by Prize Picks. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL and use code all lowercase LockedOnNFL to win $50 instantly when you pay $5. All right, Brian. So, of course, the storyline with the Rams, lots of injuries, lots of key injuries. You guys missing some key pieces, too. This feels like the injury bowl in week 3. Just what's the big storyline for your 49ers heading into this one?
Yeah, injuries is huge for both these teams. Probably the biggest storyline for both teams coming in. And by the way, love doing a crossover with you here. And I love doing the crossovers with all the hosts and all the times we get to chat with the other hosts from the other teams before the games every single week. But I almost feel bad because the way we do it as a network, the Rams are the home team here and you kind of host it, right? But I feel like kind of Levi's South, maybe I should be the one hosting this crossover podcast. I don't know. What did you say the ticket percentage was in this game right now?
Shots fired. I regret giving you that ticket percentage before we started the show, but it could be around 70% 49ers fans. And this one's going to be a lot of red. But my response to that is I'll never forget being at SoFi Stadium in 2021 and watching all those red and gold 49er fans leave that game sad after that NFC Championship loss. But look, hey, in all due respect, 49ers have a big fan base. They're not just West Coast, they're global. Big fan base, lots of great players that have come through this franchise. And look, I'm glad to see this rivalry has been restored really to another level with the Rams back in LA. But you're right, it is a factor. And Stafford's talked about it in the past as far as having to go on silent counts, and he's used to it. I don't think they're going to be that impacted by this. I think the bigger key here is which Rams team shows up, because Sean McVay, he's never started 0-2. He's already at 0-2. A lot of Rams fans kind of writing this team off. And the way I see it is, look, a lot of these key starters that you expected to be on this team are in there. I mean, Matthew Stafford, Kyron Williams, Colby Parkinson, you still have your tight end. Rob Havenstein is back from the ankle injury. Kevin Dotson, he's still in there after dealing with an injury himself. And then you're getting Alaric Jackson back. So their starting left tackle is out for their first couple of games. He's making his season debut in this one. So really, it's going to start up front. What version of the offensive line do they get? Because you have a rookie center in Bo Limmer, and then you're up to your backup guard in Logan Bruss. So that really starts there, is what version of this Rams team gets up to play against this 49ers front.
Yeah, so how many players are actually missing? Because I saw something earlier this week around 14 starters that are out for the Rams.
You want to play that game? Okay, It's as longer than the injury list for the Rams is longer than a CVS receipt. It is an episode of Squid Game, except we're like in the last episode of the season. I mean, you just look at this here. You use your QB2 in Garoppolo first couple games suspension. Left tackle 1, he's out for the first couple games due to suspension. Then you lose Puka Nacua, one of the breakout rookies last year. He was their wide receiver 1. And then Cooper Kupp, he looks great in the first game of the season versus the Rams, but he's already out. Thankfully, we learned earlier today that he's going to avoid an IR stint. So we'll talk a little more about that. But yeah, I mean, up front, their big offseason acquisition where they spent most money was to shore up the middle of that offensive line. You already had Steve Avila, who performed extremely well his rookie season. Kevin Dotson, after being traded from the Steelers to the Rams, he was an absolute revelation. But Jonah Jackson was supposed to be that dude. They signed for $51 million in a 3-year deal, $25 million guaranteed. He's on the IR. So he's out. Look at the defensive side of the ball. You're out John Johnson III as well. You're already out Darius Williams. I mean, look, yes, the injuries have been a massive issue for the Rams early on. There's no doubt about it.
It's been a huge issue for the 49ers as well. And I'm going to give you the laundry list there. But I do want to say, all trash talking aside, that NFC Championship win, 49ers fans would give up a dozen of those regular season wins where Kyle Shanahan beat Sean McVay for that NFC Championship game win too. So there's definitely some scoreboard for the Rams, even though the 49ers have had their number a lot in the regular season recently.
Yeah, and the last time the Rams beat the 49ers in the regular season, it was week 18 last season, right? We had Sam Darnold going against Carson Wentz, but do we really count that one? I mean, I'm not so sure we do. Lots of backups. I look at it as the last time the Rams have actually beaten the 49ers in the regular season was back in 2018 when the Rams beat the 49ers 48-32. Brandon Cooks had a big game. I mean, it's been a while, and this is only the second time that Brock Purdy is going to be facing this team. And last year, he goes 17 for 25, 206 yards. That's, to me, one of the big keys in this one because Kyler Murray, he did anything he wanted to do. He got everything he wanted against this Rams defense, finished with a perfect passer rating for the first time in his career. And yes, Deebo's out. Yes, CMC's out. I think it's another chance to prove why Brock Purdy is one of the better quarterbacks in the league.
No doubt. More about Brock Purdy a little bit later in this podcast, I'm sure. But as far as the injuries go, you named the two big ones. Christian McCaffrey, he was put on IR after week 1, so he'll be out for the first 5 weeks of the season now. And then Deebo Samuel came down with a calf injury, and he's going to miss at least a couple of weeks. They're not putting him on IR as of yet, which is a good sign, which means he might come back in just a couple of weeks. But those are two really important players for the 49ers. And those are the two players that Kyle Shanahan knows that he can just go into a game and you don't even have to wait for the flow of the game to start to figure out how they're going to get the ball. You can scheme things up for them days beforehand and have things ready to go for ways to get the ball in their hands. And so you don't have that if you're Kyle Shanahan. And I think it is a big blow. And look, the 49ers have run the ball fine without Christian McCaffrey with Jordan Mason. Jordan Mason right now is number 2 in the NFL in rushing after 2 weeks. 147 yards week 1, 100 yards last week. He's well over 5 yards per carry. And he can pound the rock a little bit. And they do miss some things in the passing game. And I think they could actually involve him a little bit more. But I think Kyle Shanahan also kind of wants to be smart. And you got one hurt running back. If you give him 28 carries a game like he had in the first week, he might not be healthy before Christian McCaffrey comes back. So you got to be smart there. But I think the 49ers will be fine running the football. And I have some questions about the linebackers there for the Rams a little bit later. But as far as the injuries go, the 49ers, those are the two big ones. But good news for the 49ers on the injury front this week. As of our recording of this podcast Wednesday, Talanoa Hufanga back at practice full speed for the first time since his torn ACL 10 months ago in November. And he is on track, at least right now, to make his debut this season for the 49ers in the secondary. And after seeing Justin Jefferson go 97 yards, splitting the safeties last week, that is going to be a welcomed addition back to the 49ers secondary.
Yeah, so I mean, there's a plus on that end for the 49ers. If you're the Rams, you get the left tackle that this organization wanted in that position to start the year. And I think that, yeah, you mentioned the run defense and for the Rams and the offense for the 49ers and trying to take advantage of that. The truth of the matter is, for the first couple of games, this Rams defense, minus Aaron Donald, they've gotten gassed up front. It just isn't the same. And as of right now, the Rams, 852 yards allowed. That's the worst in the NFL. 489 of those came Sunday against the Cardinals. If you saw in the overtime game when they lost to the Detroit Lions, when Montgomery turned to prime Marshawn Lynch there in overtime, they were gassed, they were pushed around, and that's definitely something that I worry about for this Rams team. But I think just the big picture, if I had to just kind of pick one big storyline for this Rams team, is what kind of season are they going to have? Are we looking at a rebuild? I mean, you have Mina Kimes out there suggesting that the Raiders trade for Matthew Stafford. You have Dan Orlovsky saying, okay, let's trade for Bryce Young. I say, you know what? You still have 7 of the 11 starters you thought you were going to have on offense right now. And all the players on the IR, they're not done for the season. They are expected to be back at some point. And you have 9 of the 11 starters that you were going to go with on defense. So you look at that. You look at the fact that you went 3-6 to start the year last year and you end up making the playoffs. Still a very long season. Yes, There's only been a handful of teams that have made the playoffs after starting 0-3. But, I mean, you have a big matchup at home against the 49ers. You're catching them, I think, at the right time as far as missing two of their key pieces. It's not going to be easy. It's going to be very difficult to beat them anyway. But I do think that you could definitely spin a positive. You could somehow eke out a win at home in your home opener.
It's going to be a fascinating one, and it's a great point with the Rams. Is like sort of big picture. There is, what is this team? Are they fishing for the number one overall pick now? Like, if you lose 3 games, do you just go all in that tank? And by the way, as far as quarterback trades go, I love an idea that my Peacock and Williamson's listener in our mailbag this week brought up, and that was trading Jimmy G to the Miami Dolphins and get back with his old offensive coordinator. I think that would be a fantastic fit. I don't know how you feel about Stetson Bennett being the long-term backup for this team, but no way you trade Matthew Stafford right now. Maybe you retool in the offseason and you think about how this team's going to go and how they're constructed. But what about Jimmy G to Miami?
I mean, look, it's an interesting thought. I mean, obviously, this Rams organization is always going to be opportunistic. I would never trade Matthew Stafford. I think that there's only a handful of Super Bowl winning quarterbacks that you can really say, okay, this guy can impact the game on that stage. You pair him with an elite head coach in Sean McVay, and you at least have the ingredients of something. But having said all that, it's like everything's on the table right now. Everything's on the table as far as where this season could go. Could it fall off the rails quickly like 2022 did? It absolutely could. Could they somehow eke out some wins and at least make it respectable to when guys can come back like a Jonah Jackson and Puka Nacua, and then maybe you make a run in the second half when you have a string of games after the bye where you can definitely try to get and find your footing? Yeah, they could. But right now, a lot of anxiety. I mean, a lot of scared Rams fans that this season is going to go south. But coming up next, we're going to dive into some of those key matchups. We're going to take a look at the matchups that ultimately will decide who wins on Sunday at SoFi Stadium, which isn't Levi's South. It's SoFi Stadium, the home of the 2021 world champion Los Angeles Rams.
And this crossover episode of Locked On 49ers and Locked On Rams is brought to you by Arena Club. For most of us that like collecting cards, the idea of spending $2,000 or more on a Luka, an Ellie, or that Patrick Mahomes rookie card, it just isn't in the cards. And even if you love collecting, that's some serious money to drop. Thanks to slab packs from arenaclub.com, now it's possible to score gem mints for a fraction of their retail price. Every card that I just listed was a hit from last week's Arena Club slab pack drop. Arena Club is the only repack that provides real value, a complete view of all possible cards, and clear hit rates for each one. Arena Club slab packs are revolutionizing the repack game with transparency. After your pulls are revealed, they'll immediately be placed in your showroom for safekeeping, selling, trading, or for auction. And the Arena Club grading process is accurate, fast, and transparent with a full grade rationale provided and explanation of how your card was scored. So right now, get 10% off your first slab pack or card purchase by going to arenaclub.com/LockedOnNFL and use code LockedOnNFL. That's arenaclub.com/LockedOnNFL, code LockedOnNFL for 10% off your first purchase.
And welcome back to this crossover edition of Locked On Rams and Locked On 49ers. Also want to send a special shout out to those everyday listeners out there that watch and listen to this show Monday through Friday. Cannot thank you enough. And yeah, if you're not a part of that Everyday Listeners Club, definitely join and you won't miss a thing about your Los Angeles Rams or your San Francisco 49ers. All right, Brian, here in our second segment, going to kind of dive a little deeper into some of these matchups. And I think after last week, seeing Matthew Stafford under duress, seeing this offensive line with a lot of backups, a lot of guys that aren't at 100%, you have to find some way to neutralize this 49ers front. Bosa had a couple sacks. You had Hargrave. You got Leonard Floyd, the old friend there. You just have to find a way to keep Matthew Stafford vertical and allow him to make some plays intermediate and down the field.
Yeah, you know all about Leonard Floyd, and he's a pro. He's not a difference-making player necessarily, but the 49ers needed somebody just to solidify the opposite side from Nick Bosa, and that's why he was brought in, and he looks really good. I don't expect him to have, a crazy 15 sack season or anything like that. But, he's up to the challenge, even though he looks kind of wiry. He's got that wiry strength, and he's actually better against the run than I expected with his size. And it's really fun to watch him play, and he is a pro. But it's all about Nick Bosa and him having big games. He got by Darisaw last week, which is really cool to see. He kind of got off a slow start as a pass rusher in week 1. But yeah, the 49ers are built like day one. John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan, like day one of their manifesto was, we're going to build this team around the defensive line. They famously didn't even scout Patrick Mahomes and Deshaun Watson because they didn't want to draft the quarterback and plug him into a bad football team. They're like, we'll go sign Kirk Cousins to free agency. We're going to draft a defensive lineman. We're going to draft Solomon Thomas. So 49ers fans still lament that. And like, yeah, maybe you should have gone back and scouted Patrick Mahomes a little bit in that draft. But it's been the important feature of this team. They're going to build around the defensive line. John Lynch is a former safety, knows how important it is to have those guys in, and it helps everybody on the back end that much more. And so we're still waiting to see what that defensive line is going to look like if they're going to dominate. And, potentially with how many guys could be out for the Los Angeles Rams up front, could be a nice day for them to feast. And that is a huge key to this game. Niners have to win up front on defense.
Yeah, and Nick Bosa, he was an absolute game wrecker last season. Had a 93 PFF grade. He was in the backfield. He was wreaking havoc. And there's always kind of that one guy that, okay, who's their Aaron Donald, right? Well, we don't have our Aaron Donald, but there's other teams that still have their version of that absolutely blows plays up. And it's definitely a big cause for concern. But I'm also looking at the secondary for the Rams because Trey White, former All-Pro, former Pro Bowler, he's dealt with multitude of different injuries, coming off that Achilles injury. So you can't expect him to play like an All-Pro in week 1 or week 2, but he got torched last week. He made Marvin Harrison Jr. go from a guy that people were saying, wait a minute, is he a bust, to wait a minute, is he the rookie of the year, right? I mean, he got absolutely torched, and you definitely want to see a better performance from him in week 2. And just this overall secondary just has not played up to the par that we expected. I mean, Cam Curl was supposed to be a better addition, and he's another guy that was 3-4 steps behind Marvin Harrison Jr. on the second touchdown. And really, you just haven't found that identity on defense if you're the Rams. I mean, they have 41 points last week, and you just need to find some semblance of something as far as a pass rush. I mean, Jared Verse probably was their best player last week, and it was his second game as a pro. And yes, it's a good thing that your first round pick is performing that well, but also doesn't speak highly of the rest of the guys that are in there.
Yeah, Jared Verse is an interesting player too, because even though he's not the biggest guy, he's a power player, and he's got that bull rush. And I was wondering how he's going to look in the NFL, if he was going to be able to develop more moves, if he was going to be able to slip the corner, bend the edge, hand swipes, and what that development was going to kind of look like, because he's really explosive in a straight line. Can he turn the corner is my question. So early returns are good on the first round pick.
Yeah, no, Jared Verse, he showed. I mean, he was applying pressure off the right side. He did miss Kyler Murray a couple times. I mean, he was so elusive on that 18-yard touchdown pass. He had a couple opportunities to bring him down. But, I mean, come on, it's Kyler Murray, right? I mean, you have to definitely know that that's going to happen during certain spots. But really, the middle linebackers were not good as well. I don't know if you're following the storyline about Ernest Jones and the trade to the Titans, but he was their highest rated player on defense in their second game in Tennessee. And you certainly missed Ernest Jones in game 2. I mean, just looking at some of these offseason storylines, Aaron Donald said that he was passing the torch to Ernest Jones. Yes. He has the C on his chest. He's the green dot guy. And all of a sudden, a couple weeks before the season, yes, you do have Chris Shields going to play some more safety, not utilize the linebackers as much, but you lose your team leader in that sense. And then you just look at Troy Reeder and the linebackers they had in game 2, not filling those gaps, getting beat over the middle. It's definitely a soft spot that the 49ers could certainly exploit in an area where you need to see a better performance from the Rams in week 3.
Yeah, and whether it's running the ball for the 49ers or, utilizing the passing game over the middle of the field, Kyle Shanahan feasts on linebackers, and especially feasts on poor linebacker play. And that was going to be one of my questions, because you look at this group, and of the listed true linebacker, off-ball linebackers, there's 5 of them. They're all former undrafted players. 2 of them undrafted rookies in Spates and Neal. You got Jacob Hummel. You mentioned Troy Reeder, Christian Roseboom. What's the scouting report on those guys? And my other question, as far as especially against the run, because Braden Fisk is an animal as a pass rusher at Florida State, Jared Verse's former teammate, by the way. But I thought he was a liability against the run. And so when I look at this team and I look at, sort of undersized edge guy in Byron Young, and I look at Braden Fisk, and I look at those linebackers, and I feel like Kyle Shanahan's just going to run it right down their throat, and then he's going to go play action and throw it to Kittle right behind him. I just feel like that's probably what the game plan is going to be for the 49ers in this one.
Yeah, I mean, they're just not getting off blocks. They're not filling up gaps. I mean, specifically about Christian Roseboom. I mean, you're talking about a guy that is not some lights out athletic guy, and Hummel as well. These are really replacement level linebacker type of players that it's just this organization just does not think highly of those kind of players, right? They don't invest in them. They don't use high draft capital on them. They don't sign them. Clearly, they didn't want to give Ernest Jones a contract. Not only did they not want to give Ernest Jones a contract.
Let's get him out of here.
Exactly. Yeah. He's too good, right? I mean, Ernest Jones was willing to play out that year knowing he wasn't going to get an extension. And still, they said, we're good. And look, the truth of the matter is, anytime a team like last week, like the Cardinals, they rush for 231 yards on the ground, that tells you there's a really good chance your linebackers aren't playing well. So they desperately need better play from their linebackers, especially going up against running teams that are going to just try to pound it down their throat like the 49ers, like you'll see in the Packers in a couple of weeks. And it's going to be a major, major test because it's not just that, it's trying to contain quarterback as well. So yeah, lots of things to be stressed about. I mean, and look, here's the thing, Brian, you do these previews throughout the summertime and you break all this stuff down. And one thing we were saying all summer is you really can't give a true assessment and evaluation of this defense to see how they perform when Aaron Donald isn't getting quad teamed, right? Isn't getting triple teamed. All these guys are having to force to do this on their own. And on top of that, you got Braden Fisk, a rookie out of Florida State, and Jared Verse trying to figure things out on the fly. So they really need to step up, and I think the best thing you can do for the Rams defense is score points on offense. I think you definitely need to see a vintage Matthew Stafford performance. Guys like Demarcus Robinson stepping up, guys like Tyler Johnson, Tutu Atwell. I mean, he's shown that he can get open. He does make plays. His ADOT is pretty impressive if he gets opportunities. And also, I don't know if you're familiar with this guy, Jordan Whittington out of Texas. It looks like if you would go into a lab and build a Rams receiver as far as physicality and blocking ability, he certainly has that in spades. So it's an opportunity for those guys. Yes, you're out Puka. Yes, you're out Cooper, but you do still have Matthew Stafford. And of all those trio, he's the most important one that's still healthy.
Yeah, and I don't know if you want to wait and get to this next, but I got questions for you about Jordan Whittington and the rest of that pass catching group for the Rams in this game, because I'm fascinated, and kind of selfishly, I got some questions about my fantasy team and who to start there and who to pick up.
Hey, man, I'm missing Deebo. I'm missing CMC for my keeper league. I mean, I'm a hot mess, man. I'm a hot mess. But coming up next, we're going to throw out some predictions, some more keys to a victory for the Rams and the 49ers here on this crossover edition of Locked On Rams and Locked On 49ers. And a friendly reminder that today's episode of Locked On Rams and Locked On 49ers is brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. FanDuel is America's #1 sports book because it's incredibly fun. You can take all the best parts of football and make it about you and make some money along the way. Whether you're talking about team totals, player props, money lines, all the different things that you have at FanDuel, but this is a little bit different. We have something a little different for you right now through September 22nd. All FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a free 3-week trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. And with a YouTube TV base plan, you'll be able to watch every regular season Sunday afternoon at a market game. Now, if you've ever had NFL Sunday Ticket, you know how great it is. If you've never had NFL Sunday Ticket, you don't know what you're missing. It's all the football all the time, and all you need is a Google account and a current form of payment, and you can cancel at any time. It's easy. Just visit FanDuel.com and download America's #1 sports book for a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. And welcome back to Locked On Rams and Locked On 49ers. We've got a crossover edition Thursday. Third segment, we're going to throw out some keys to victory. We're going to throw out some predictions. But as far as the wide receivers go, I mean, you're looking at a golden opportunity for someone to step up, get targets, make plays. Last year when Tutu Atwell, he really fell off. I mean, he got supplanted by Demarcus Robinson. He really stepped up as a red zone threat. He really built a lot of chemistry with Matthew Stafford. And he's one of the first guys I'm looking at to be that go-to guy for Stafford, along with Tyler Johnson.
So this is what's interesting to me. So we saw Tyler Johnson kind of jump into the Puka role. Demarcus Robinson's kind of always been his role, but I don't think Demarcus Robinson's role would change that much, even with Nacua and now Cooper Kupp out, because his role is kind of his role. What has me fascinated and really excited is the guy you mentioned, Jordan Whittington, because you look at how he's built. He's really good after the catch, that big power slot player. And if he slips in there and starts running the Cooper Kupp routes, that's what has me excited. That's what has me excited about my fantasy team and picking him up and being like, can this be a lightning in the ball situation like we saw? And I don't want to put it on and be like, oh, he's the next Puka Nacua. Like it's that easy. I don't think it's always going to be that easy. But if there's a team and a scheme and a quarterback and a coach that you could find a guy in the 6th round and be like, well, this guy's tough. He'll go over the middle. He'll make plays after the catch. He'll make those catches in traffic. And guess what? Cooper Kupp's hurt. So you're playing his position now, and you got those slot targets, which are some of the most valuable targets now in the NFL. I feel like the upside is a little bit higher with him, even though he's a rookie.
100%. I mean, this is a golden opportunity for him to, I'm not saying it's going to be this year's Puka Nacua, but if he has a couple of good games with them out, he can jump in front of the guys ahead of him on the depth chart. And it's really interesting when it comes to Jordan Whittington, because in the opener against the Lions, he played just 2 offensive snaps, but he would have scored a touchdown if it weren't for A.J.R. Curry's holding there where he's grabbing the face mask. And then you look in week 2, 26 snaps. He caught 2 passes, no gain, and then had another one for 22 yards. But he remained the starter for the last part of that game. I think that you look at that right there, you probably say, oh, he's probably not going to be a starter, right? You're probably going to look at guys like Demarcus Robinson as one of your starters, and then a combination of Whittington, Atwell, and Tyler Johnson. But I think when you consider the fact that he played the entire second half on Sunday after Kupp was injured, I think he's the guy that stepped up and is the starter. And yes, he is a 6th round pick in just his 3rd game, but this guy just is built different, man. He's got that, man, dude is straight up jacked. I mean, he's got the physicality. He just feels like the moment's not too big for him. And I almost think that he's saying, you know what? It's next man up mentality. I think he's built for this. I totally think he's going to be a big factor for the Rams, at least as far as just getting the opportunities.
And Winnington was blocked a little bit and it was kind of a hidden gem at Texas. Yes. There was 2 guys that were 1st round caliber dudes that were there with him as well. So I think he probably, if A.D. Mitchell doesn't transfer to Texas and stay at Georgia early in his career, Whittington maybe is the number 2 guy there. And does he get drafted in the 4th round instead, right? The 3rd round or something like that, because the tape is good, but he just kind of got lost a little bit. Jordan Mason, it was the same story. And the 49ers plucked him as an undrafted free agent. He got supplanted he was a starter early in his career at Georgia Tech. He got supplanted by the guy who ended up being number 12 pick in the draft Jahmyr Gibbs at Georgia Tech. Jahmyr Gibbs was the biggest prospect they ever got, the biggest recruit ever in that school's history. And then he transferred to Alabama and we're like, oh yeah, Jahmyr Gibbs. That's why Jordan Mason didn't play that much. So I think there's some similarities there. Guys that were blocked on their college team that were a lot better might have got drafted higher.
And that were highly touted recruits, right? Jordan Whittington was a 5-star recruit. Just goes to show, I mean, some of these guys like the Ohio State dudes, you know what I mean? The first couple of years, you're going to be behind that depth chart. Look at Marvin Harrison Jr. He's behind Njigba. He's behind Olave. He's behind all those dudes and Garrett Wilson at one point. Yeah. So, I mean, for me, I'd rather go to the bigger program where I can learn and then less wear and tear. And now Jordan Whittington's in a perfect spot with a better organization that kind of has the ability to utilize him. But I want to ask you a couple questions too, as far as this offense without CMC, this offense without Deebo. You saw Jordan in the first game. I think it was 28 carries. That was the most ever by a Shanahan-led team. I mean, what kind of challenge do you think this presents the Rams versus what they've seen in the past as far as how you use CMC last year and Deebo? I mean, are you going to go run heavy? Are you going to see a little more on the outside? I mean, what do you expect from how the game plan is going to look from Shanahan?
There was a surprisingly few amount of play action snaps last week in the Minnesota Vikings, and I don't know why that is, because the Shanahan, it's all about motion and play action. And so I think they're going to get back to that in this one. You're going to see more motion, more play action. And yeah, they're going to get that. Kyle Shanahan's such a genius in this way. And that's why I brought up the linebackers, because he does that thing where you have a running back, he's right next to the quarterback. And then he just shifts. He doesn't shift across the formation. He shifts 3 steps over. And all Kyle Shanahan wants is that angle. He just wants that linebacker to go, okay, I'm going to go this way with the running back. And then they've got that cut back angle that they want. And so that's why I'm fascinated with the linebacker matchup in this. And that's probably what Kyle Shanahan's looking to get after. So I have a feeling it's going to be a heavy run game again. And Kyle Shanahan loves his RB1s. Jordan Mason could never get on the field when Christian McCaffrey was healthy. And now that Christian McCaffrey's out, he won't take Jordan Mason off the field either. He's gotten every snap but one in the last 2 games running the football for the 49ers. So maybe you see a little rookie Isaac Guerrero in there, but I think it's going to be a heavy dose of Jordan Mason once again. And I'd be shocked if he has less than 20 carries in this game. And a little glimpse into the future with the 49ers passing game, because when you sign Brandon Ayuk, he's 2 years younger than Deebo. His body was probably going to have less wear and tear than Deebo's and last a little bit longer. So when you look ahead to this 49ers team in 2025, 2026 and beyond, that's why you signed Deebo Samuel to be that number one of the future, even if he's not the number one option in the offense right now. Well, Christian McCaffrey's already hurt and Deebo's out now. So we're going to kind of get a glimpse on what this future passing game is going to look like for the 49ers with a true outside number one wide receiver in Brandon Ayuk with your young quarterback that might earn upwards of $50 to $60 million as a free agent. And so I'm fascinated to see what that looks like without Deebo and Christian McCaffrey getting those automatic, we're game planning to get you touches early. Kyle Shanahan doesn't have that in this game.
Yeah, and that's where it's kind of one of those things, especially with guys out. Do you play the hot hand? I mean, do you play the hot matchup? And I think you were kind of going back to the Jordan Whittington thing. You're going to see him a ton in motion. I mean, that's how they're going to use him. I mean, week 1, they had 42 snaps with Cooper Kupp where he's in motion and 12 in week 1 as well. So it's like, I mean, this guy is constantly being utilized in the same fashion. I think the X factor for the Rams, though, it has to be Kyren Williams. Where has the 2023 version of Kyren Williams been? And a lot of that in week 1 was the fact that the offensive line was decimated by injuries. So you kind of had to go to more West Coast quick passing game to try to keep Stafford upright. But I mean, he just has been non-existent. I mean, last game, 12 carries, longest rush, 9 yards, caught 4 passes for 27 yards. But, I mean, most of that came when it was garbage time anyway. So second straight week that Kyren Williams hasn't been that true impact running back that we saw last season. The first 2 games, 75 yards on 30 carries this season. So if you can get the Kyren Williams that we saw last year, that was one of the big reasons why the Rams went on their second half run. It's going to go a long way to see if you can just stay in this game. If you can just stay in this game and keep it interesting late and hopefully walk away with the win.
Yeah, and one thing with the Rams, and it's why I don't want to count the Rams out, not only in this game, but when you look at a season, let's say they go 0-3, and the reason they're not going to tank, the reason they're not going to end up with the number 1 pick in the draft or something like that, or even a top 5 pick, is because Sean McVay's too good and Matthew Stafford's too good. And when you have a great coach and quarterback, that is the thing that you want in the NFL. Now, they might have a lot less on top of that right now, and the defense might not be willing to allow them to do that. But guess what? There's maybe some fireworks in this one. We've got the number 1 and number 2 passing yardage leaders in the NFL right now in Brock Purdy and Matthew Stafford. So, yeah, let's just let them sling it and have a little fun on Sunday.
Exactly. I mean, both teams kind of looking to get a get-right game in some capacity. Rams 0-2, Niners at 1-1. I mean, you lose to your former quarterback backup in Darnold. Yeah, that crazy 97-yard touchdown with Justin Jefferson. I'm sure you haven't enjoyed watching that highlight all week. But, yeah, it's a great opportunity for this Rams team to say, okay, if you can get this win, then that early bye that you have in week 6 starts to feel a little better, and you start to change the entire outlook of your season. If you fall to 0-3, then things get really, really dicey for you at that point against an opponent that you've lost to. I think it's 8 out of 10, 8 out of last 9 times in the regular season, which is pretty wild. But it's going to be a tough one. Any predictions, though? Do you throw out scores on the crossover episodes, Brian?
Usually we kind of wait for the final episode for the predictions, but I'll say that the spread, I don't like that the spread is over a touchdown. The half a point is getting me here. And, you know, these are really familiar teams. And when you go on the road against a division opponent, it's hard to consistently blow those teams out. Even if I do like the 49ers in this one, if there's a way to bet on this, looking at the FanDuel odds, maybe you take the points with the Rams at 7.5, and you think they keep this within a touchdown. But the 49ers going to be a little extra angry. Might have been a little tougher practices this week coming off a loss. I don't like that for the Rams that the 49ers lost last week, because you probably don't even get that, you know, we're gonna look past this team that's kind of decimated in injuries this week.
Yeah, it's tough to talk myself into a pick for sure. I mean, I'm still kind of reeling off the 0-2 start, but I still think that, yeah, there is an opportunity there for this Rams team against this 49ers. They're going to come up. They're going to be ready to play. It's the home opener. You're getting guys back. Like you say, you still have Stafford and Sean McVay. Also, I mean, look, this team, they just need a break. They need something good to happen for them. I was looking at doing a little prep for the show, saw the 49ers, second worst third down defense in the NFL. Well, guess what? Rams, one of the worst at converting, right? Just 7 of 23 attempts. So kind of my point is some things just kind of have to give in this game one way or the other. And hopefully you'll start to get that positive regression to the mean if you're the Rams. So you know what? I'm not afraid. I'll throw out a prediction. You know what? 0-2. They're going to be 1-2 after this game. I got the Rams winning. Give me the Rams 24 to 16. 24 to 16 in this one. You don't have to give your prediction, but what do you think about that score? What are your thoughts?
Oh man, I don't. The camera isn't catching what you're drinking down there before we recorded this podcast. But no, look, I was confident in the 49ers last week after seeing them on Monday Night Football. Then they went on the road and they lost to Sam Darnold. And the Rams have a better quarterback than Sam Darnold, that's for sure, and a pretty darn good coach as the Vikings do as well. I do like the 49ers in this one, though, and I think the loss last week actually hurts the Rams' chances as well because the 49ers are going to be ready to play. Getting Hufanga back is going to help their third down defense, hopefully, and maybe a little bit more pass rush against a beat-up offensive line, I think, is just the thing the 49ers need to get right after a big loss. So I do like the 49ers. I'd be surprised if the 49ers dropped the second one in a row.
It'd be tough to see, but there's Sean McVay going 0-3. But yeah, I look, this is my last homer. Okay, of all the crossover episodes, this is my last homer pick of the season. I promise week 4 to be a little more with my head over my heart picks after this. But that's going to do it for this episode of Locked On Rams and Locked On 49ers. Special thanks to Brian Peacock. You can, of course, follow him on the X. Listen to his show, the best 49ers podcast out there. You can follow him at BD Peacock. And until next time, whose house? It's Locked On Rams House.